like you feel like you're out of space. You do?
Yeah. You're good.
Was Tom on here?
Yeah, he's out.
He was able to get on both ways. All right.
He's talk.
Oh, okay. Pete, I think we're good.
Okay, let's call the workshop meeting of the town board to discuss grant opportunities for the upcoming fiscal year. Who would like to start?
Well, joining us is Nathan and Bernie from our grant consultants. Nathan and I talked last week about the short time frame on which we need to both look at our CFA rotation for this cycle and also look at other grant opportunities. So the town board, who's all here either virtually, will be here soon, or present in the room, as well as some key department heads to start the discussion. So I think that's everything. How's Nathan feeling?
Doing okay. I woke up feeling 100%, and I think right now I'm down to about 50 to 60. Okay. Just starting aches, some headaches, and just a lot of just feeling pretty sluggish is all. So hopefully tomorrow we'll be back 100%. Very optimistic. So glad we got it done. Get through it 2 weeks from now. No masks. Yay. So, but I appreciate you asking. Thank you.
So Nathan, we talked last week for a while. If you want to work through with the board and the department heads, or Bernie, if you want to kind of take us through the same kind of discussion in terms of priorities in the town board, and all of us can chirp in when we see fit.
Okay. How about if I start off, Nate? Basically,
Sure.
The consolidated fund application is now open. And under that category is quite a few open granting agencies, like parks, for example. Your LWRP projects are available. There is WQIP. So there is quite a bit of opportunity here that if we have a definitive project and a clear scope of work and a budget, I think we could take advantage of possibly continuing on where we sort of left off last year with our projects. I know that our force main project that we wanted to put in for WQIP for this round, I understand is completed. So unfortunately with grants, that once you pay for it without a contract, then those expenses are not eligible. So, moving on with that, if there is any additional work that has to be done that could fall under that category, there's some information that we would definitely have to talk about. So the CFAs right now is like the priority of the projects. Coming down the pike is going to be the Environmental Facilities Corporation, which is going to be your water, your drinking water, and then your clean water projects that fall outside of that WQIP or the GIGP, which is the Green Innovation Grant Program. And after that, I believe, is going to be the Department of Transportation. And those are like for your sidewalks that we have been talking about for a while, as well as possibly some trails. So leaving it at that gives you sort of gives us the overall look of what opportunities are coming down the pike. So Nate, I'm going to ask you to sort of say where we left off. I know that we had a possible trail project. I'm not sure if we got any additional water or sewer projects that would fall under the WQIP. So that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Nate.
Well, in saying that, I think it's important to recognize that we're going into, the CFA was obviously not available last year, but with it coming back around this year, I know not everyone has had familiarity or experience with the grants that are offered under the CFA, but going into the 11th round here, it's pretty much the same traditional programs and grants that have been offered under the previous 10 rounds. So there's really not too much new information to report as far as what funding opportunities are available. So I think, obviously we're under a pretty tight timeline and deadline here. We've got about 6 to 7 weeks at most here. Jen and I had quite a bit of discussion last week. I can go through some of the potential projects and issue areas that we talked about sort of just to prepare for today's discussion. And I know Bernie's had some discussions with the supervisor and some other departments throughout the town. So I'll just touch on a couple of points that came up with Jen and I. I know she relayed a lot of that information to you after our conversation, but I'll just go back and touch on those. I know that obviously East River Road has been an issue for several years, and what to do with it and how to get there. It's obviously, I don't know exactly how many miles long it is, but we know that there are issues there with, there are traffic issues, there are public safety issues, there's a high demand for recreational uses, so people can still cycle around the entire island. It's a great opportunity now with the West River Road Trail open. I know there's a high desire to see similar infrastructure or amenities on East River Road. I know we did have a meeting, I want to say 2 years ago, possibly in 2019. We brought in some of the Erie County representatives. At the time, the TAP and CMAQ was open. They seemed to acknowledge that they were very supportive, obviously with it being a county road, to work with the town on any major significant projects. But from our end, we don't 100% know what the town desires to do with East River Road. So, a lot of times with such large and substantial projects, and when I mean large, I mean we're talking more in terms of the funding and the monies and investment that would be necessary to transform that road, however you see fit. So possibly the best way to start is with some sort of a feasibility study. I think we would need some direction as to what you would want that feasibility study to take into account. There could potentially be an opportunity here, if that's still high on the town's list of priorities, to put in an application to Empire State Development. They have a strategic planning and feasibility study category. We did one a couple years ago across the way there, the city of Tonawanda. They did a feasibility study on reconstructing and redesigning Niagara Street, basically from the downtown all the way up to the city limits, slight further past where Niawanda Park is there. Let's see, that is...
Nathan, did they do that in conjunction with the state?
They did. They got the grant with Empire State Development. So it was a 50-50 cost match. At the time, it was a $150,000 grant. I believe not. They have slightly lowered that down to 100,000.
You met in 2019. Was that discussed at all with the county representatives of doing that feasibility study?
I do not believe it was. I don't recall if it was discussed with the county.
From my perspective as the highway superintendent, it's our community, it's their road, so there should be
Right.
kind of a partnership to spur them to do something for us.
Mm-hmm.
They are gonna this year be repaving 2.2 miles from Broadway to Harvey, and that's all we're gonna get done this year, which is good, but there's still a hell of a lot more that they need to do. So
Sure.
from my perspective, to do that would be wonderful, because you've got another 12 miles of East River Road that needs to be redone.
Well, I think the feasibility study, if you're just looking to do maintenance on the road, that's not necessarily the, what the feasibilities you.
Like a shoulder, a wider shoulder, or a
Well,
sidewalk doesn't really fix the problem.
The other component of this is that the Shoreline Trail is now taking East River Road off as a designated route because of the condition of it. So the money that it will take to do a lot of that. I mean, when you get down to Stony Point to baseline, you've got adequate shoulder, but from Stony Point south to Harvey, you don't, or Staley, you don't.
Well, it's above and beyond that. I mean, plain and simply, I mean, just start from alignment issues for implementing ideas. On top of that, the bones underneath it, the drainage system is kaput for just about the entire situation, through that entire road. The county sat with us a couple of years ago and went, oh, we'll write you letters of support, and didn't want to do, plain and simply, anything. I don't know if shouldn't be saying this, but I'm saying this. They really basically said, well, we'll stand behind you and support you. But Grand Island shouldn't be taking the lead on an absolutely massive infrastructure undertaking of just the bare bones of the road. I mean, if we were talking about, hey, we got this great road and we want to improve and put pedestrian elements and things on it, what a fantastic idea. But this thing's a ground zero restart of a county road. And they would have the say on so much of the infrastructure needs, in that how can we commission to get a trail report in when it's their road and they dictate how it would be? I don't see, without them as a lead, anything being, and I don't want to be the doomsayer, but I don't see anything on East River Road being done without the county being the driver's seat lead, both effort, financially, every piece of the puzzle.
I agree with you, Bob. And the other thing that I heard unofficially is that they are not looking to do anything dramatically with East River Road until this lawsuit is behind them.
Right.
So, again,
Well,
that's unofficially that.
I think
let me enter.
with
I'd like to enter. Go ahead, Jen. Go ahead.
we kind of, Nathan and I kind of arrived at the same part, just the millions of dollars it would take to fully reconstruct that. We don't even see a larger branch of government being able to do that, but he did talk, interestingly enough, about other measures we could take there in terms of safety, signage. If our priorities are keeping everyone safe and we can't do that by rebuilding this road, what else we could possibly do in terms of signage and whatnot.
Well, if we want to go after grants to rebuild a road, I've got at least 2 of them that need to be rebuilt. And Ransom
It's on the
Road,
list, he knows.
Ransom Road from Sturbridge to East River, and Elvin Road from the information center to baseline.
And they're ours, and we control all aspects of them. So it's easier to turn that into an improvement. We get to say what happens with it.
Well, let me interject here. Just on let's do some planning on this. I think number one, the town has to come up with the desire to do something with that road, whatever that happens to be. Let's say, let's just explore a macro look at it. If we're going to make it a trail, we're going to calm the traffic, so to improve traffic on there to promote pedestrian and bicyclist safety. We need to sort of focus in on, what would the town like to see done with that project. Number two, unfortunately,
Bernie, are you talking East River?
East River.
yes.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a county
It's
town road.
not our road. Our responsibility would be to go to our county legislator and say, hey, it's about time you did something.
Correct, and that's what I was going to get to next. Most of these projects in Western New York, across New York State, actually, when you got a situation where the road is owned by a different entity, like the county, a state, or something different, however, the municipality that's located on that strip of road or whatever, in your case, it's an island. If the town has that desire to have something done with it, then yes, the town takes the lead on it. It has to be a partnership with the owner of the road, which in this case would be the county, to get their buy-in on it. But we would still, as a municipality, still take the lead. And I'll give you a couple examples. Continuing the path down along Lake Erie, there is 3 or 4 municipalities that have chunks of road that are owned by the county along the lake. So every municipality has been coming at, I want a bike path, or I just want a walking path. And so they're the ones that are still promoting that section of idea, okay? Along, even in Niagara County, along Lower River Road, even though it's a county road, each municipality has their section on what they want to do with it. So the first step in the East River Road project, if there is one, is to really say, what does the town want to do? What do you guys want to see? Because if you're looking at traffic calming to see what we can do, that's not really a grant, okay? Because that's going to be, let's put some signs up, some bumpers, road bumps, whatever it's going to take to calm the traffic down. So, and again, I'm not trying to simplify it too much, but if we're then talking on the other hand, where we're talking multi-million-dollar projects and infrastructure and possible land acquisition,
All the
there is
utility
a lot.
replacements.
Utility replacement, there is a lot of prep that we would have to do prior to even attempting to go after a grant to accomplish that. So going back to the feasibility study, yeah, if you have a goal in mind on that, then yes, let's conduct a feasibility study. But if you really don't, then until you have sort of a game plan on what to do or what you think you would like to do, there's several steps that we need to take. For example, just, let's say that we do want to put a trail there, just conversation only. Well, petitions have to be done, land acquisition might have to be done, restriping has to be done, any type of infrastructure that may need to be included. And there is grant monies out there and the multi-million dollars to accomplish maybe some of that. And then leveraging other granting sources to offset the cost to the town. So you have, your town share that we can offset by other granting sources. But again, what is your goal? What are you hoping to accomplish? And I think that's more important right now than applying for what we think we want to do. And until you're for sure where you want to go with this thing, I would put it back onto the town's shoulders to say, hey, listen, I think here's what we'd like to do, and I'm going to leave it at that. If that makes sense to you, because I know that we talked about this for several years, but again, it's a process. It's a very long process, and you really need to get all the stakeholders involved to make this thing happen.
Well, feasibility wise of that road, it spells one thing and one thing only in my mind alone. And that's a widened shoulder, single bike path, one side of it, which causes a realignment of that road extensively throughout it. I mean, it has a huge right of way. There may be some acquisition pieces. There are some narrow points, but that's really it. I don't see standalone trails. I don't see anything else other than trying to have a shoulder area safer use for the public that wishes to try to experience that area.
I wonder,
Right.
we want to take a small bite first, like, let's just say Stony Point to Harvey, or maybe all the way to the.
Well, you need a master of feasibility, and then from there, yeah, there's no way anybody's going to have the dollars to build the thing in one fell swoop.
No, they would break up any sort of reconstruction or redesign into probably, for that length of road, probably 5 to 6 phases.
I mean,
Yeah.
if there's a paved part of East River, right in that concerned section, we should try to get them to do the extended shoulder as
Well,
part of that project.
It's got good shoulders in that area for the most part, from Broadway to the South Bridge, and then from the South Bridge to Harvey, it's suspect. So half of it's good and half of it's narrow.
I agree.
I'd say from Stony Point to Harvey, or all the way to the hotel almost, is probably the biggest risky area in my mind.
Yeah,
Do you agree?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
narrow. It's narrow. No
Right.
question. No question.
So And with that being said, with Lynn and John, what do you what would you guess dollar would be on a feasibility study for that length of road
For the study,
to cover those widened shoulders and potential acquisition?
it's hard to say because there's some spots where geographically it becomes, as Bob said, the right of way is huge, but half of it's a cliff. So what do you do there? You can't hang shoulders in the air.
Right.
You know,
It could
there's
be
spots
on
where you have
the
houses on the
riverside,
water
it
side
could
and
be on
houses
the
on the
land
upland
side.
side.
Now you're taking-
Correct. No, and in that feasibility study, that would be uncovered to figure out what to do there, if anything.
Right.
So, but how much you think it would cost for having an engineering firm conduct this study?
I have no idea. We'd have to put out an RFP.
Well, I'm gonna say if the city of Tonawanda spent $150,000 or so on Niagara Street, you're probably looking at double, if not triple that.
Sure.
And
Fair starting point, honestly.
And you really have to do a
Mhm.
feasibility first. I mean, there's no way to just,
So the next question, are you guys good with the match then on something like this? Let's say that the project does come in at, 300,000, then we're looking at $150,000 of match for a study.
Wasted money,
So,
gonna sit for 20 years.
Didn't Nathan say their grant max out of 100,000?
it's 100,000 this year, yes. So if it was
so
300,
whatever
yeah, you're looking
over,
at
you're
a 3 to 1
$200,000.
match. Yeah.
Yep.
That's where, my experience of sitting with the board members and sitting with the county was, the expectation was that the county was the bigger, the county's getting the plus of a new road and shoulders out of this. The plus we're getting is a new pedestrian elements. That seems crass, I'll say it in my words, that, we fund the county's new road. Because they basically did not want to commit, in any way to a financial obligation. Oh, we'll write letters and we'll be behind you on it. That's what came out of the meeting.
Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, the town should not have to bear the brunt of the majority of that cost.
I think
So
up to date.
I would say you would have to meet with the county and see what their desires are and what they would commit to it. And, again, just timing wise, that's very, very tight at this point.
did I not hear they're not even gonna talk about it until after the lawsuit?
Well, that was the unofficial comment made to me, yeah.
The other piece of the puzzle is they're focused on, okay, they can pave and clean up and try to save what they have. And a lot of money can be spent doing that. You throw a plan, okay, so let's pull 100,000 out of their coffers. You just took away quarter mile of road or something, whatever, but they're in a mindset right now that they're trying to put Band-Aids on everything, not
Right.
building the future plan. They're just trying to fix stuff right now is where their main focus is, because that's the county's gotten so far into so many roads they own in so many conditions and so many places they got to work. There isn't a pot to do planning right now. They're totally in triage.
Okay. Well, to me, then this sounds like we need to table this project until you have a meeting with the county to discuss, future plans on this and see where their level of commitment is as a stakeholder in the project, and then prepare, for the next round. Because at this point here, if you got a lawsuit that's in the middle of this thing, you've got a stakeholder that's, is not part of, I don't want to say a committee, but again, you got to have a project manager, someone that's going to drive this thing, pulling all the parties together to say, okay, what are we going to do with this thing? And until we're at that point and everybody's at the table to move forward, I think we need to, this has got to be tabled, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what we can do now. So
Good idea.
Can
Well,
those
we had.
fall under this at all?
I think Nathan is. something.
I've got just a couple more points, and then again, I kind of want to turn it back onto you guys because I'm sure you have a much more, either extensive or more specific list. We did talk about some improvements that Vets Park may need. I know there's some drainage issues there. New York State Parks is open for park improvements. Again, it's another 50-50 cost share grant. My only recommendation or suggestion to Jen on that would be, there's no way we're going to get just a standalone drainage project funded through parks. There's got to be some sort of a recreation component, an accessibility component.
Well, I know that's something that the Parks and Rec Advisory Board has contemplated, especially getting some accessibility between the baseball diamonds. But frankly, it doesn't make any sense to do that until we resolve the drainage issues. So I think if we could try and maybe put the two of them together to get some grant funding, that would be worth exploring.
Direction we were going in, Tom.
So I think that's a good one, if we can justify that.
We
It's
talked,
way past due.
Nathan and I talked about biting the bullet and trying to get the drainage improvement, the possibility of when we're looking at the recreational element of it, of completing some of the paths that haven't been over there. He thought the drainage was addressed in a way where the water flowed into some kind of gardening or eco-friendly element. It could help or enhance the possibility of us getting the grant funding. And of course, he mentioned the extension of, for down the road, the CV CARES Act money as a possible location for a splash pad. So that's what we talked about in Burns Park.
Right. Can we link the CV CARES Act money with parks money?
Well, it would be a different thing, but it would still be part of stuff we want to pursue during this year.
So
The
leverage
CV
one
comes
against
later,
the other.
right? What do you, Nathan, you want to talk about that holistically? John's wanting to know how all that works together if we wanted to approach this as a park-wide project, those elements.
Well, I think the splash pad at Veterans Park, I think that would be a good fit for that CDBG CV fund. You know, we put in the application last fall, just the location didn't happen to work out. But it's essentially, you know, the parameters of the grant are pretty close to the same. And we've got until the end of August to do that. I would make, if the splash pad is something you want to pursue, I would make that its own application to the CDBG grant.
Income requirement to that?
I'm sorry?
They eliminate the income requirement to that?
We have to go back and look. I mean, something that's always a little tricky with the community development grant. I mean, you know, splash pad is obviously going to serve the entire community. So we would have to look at, you know, what areas of the town would certainly meet those demographic criteria and thresholds. But when you're also providing a benefit to the entire community, I think that is also something they're taking into consideration with this CV or CARES Act fund. We're just kind of starting to get, to be honest with you, a little bit more clarification from the county. There was a lot of uncertainty, I guess, or disagreement on who qualified based on the notice of funding opportunity that came out. So we went back to the county and said, you know, the funding opportunity says that it's open to entitlement and non-entitlement communities. Traditionally, with the community development block grant, when the state comes out with its competitive round, you know, Erie County communities as part of the consortium aren't eligible, but they went, Paul D'Orlando and Marie Thornton and those guys up at Erie County planning, they went back to the state and requested some clarification, and actually were very appreciative that we were kind of trying to drill down on that, because just about every community in Niagara County or Erie County, according to them, was sort of caught in this confusion. So they've come back and said that all communities are eligible to apply. We need to kind of drill down a little bit further and see if the location within the town is going to be scrutinized for eligibility.
That's why we did last year, because it was location had to be in a certain census block.
Right. So as soon as I get a little bit more clarification on precise or specific locations, I can get that information back to you. But it could still be a good component for a park grant. I think you just want to look at the cost of that overall project. I think the park grants are up to it's either 500,000 or 600,000. It's 500,000 this year. Again, a 50-50 grant. You know, I've seen splash pads range anywhere from 200, 250, all the way up to 400,000. So taking into consideration some of the other elements that may be a priority for that park, like the drainage, you know, accessibility paths, you know, everything we want to do with New York State parks in terms of park improvements that's not environmentally related. We want to talk about improving access, inclusive access, you know, for all users, regardless of you know, physical ability or disability. So I don't know if there are needs at the park for that, whether it's the entranceway, a perimeter pathway, interconnecting pathways. Those are all good, obviously good components, and you know, get all those buzzwords in there for some of the criteria and priorities that they're looking for. And I'll also always suggest trying to include some sort of ecological component, whether it's, you know, something as robust as like green infrastructure with like a rain garden or bioretention area, or just simply some landscaping, native plantings. You know, we're in the midst of doing our tree inventory. You know, I'm sure we could get some really great recommendations from some of our partners at DEC on the types of plantings they may recommend. But we also might want to be working with a landscape architect. You know, we want to have something that's clearly and concisely planned out. The park grant itself, the application, does require a little bit of input and effort from engineering. You know, they ask for a very specific site plan. So there might be some mapping that needs to be done with the boundaries, associated amenities, you know, located in and around the park, in addition to all of the current existing amenities in the park, and then what we're proposing. So there's a little bit of work to be done on the engineering side, and then again, obviously going out for cost estimates, and again, any other recreational priorities that are there. I know we've talked about some ball fields, but obviously if there's some drainage and other issues, I think those you'd want to address those first.
Well, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at least with respect to the existing ball fields, I think they're going to be very much affected by the drainage project, because the only way to develop drainage would be to kind of elevate some of those. At least that was my discussion with Chris Dan. You know, on the splash pad thing, the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, and I think this board, and Pete and I have also discussed the fact that we kind of need to have a long-term master plan for Vets Park that I think we ought to get on, especially if we're going to be considering stuff like this. But it's all good. You know, any improvements we can make there, I think, are money and time well spent. So,
but you know, you're talking about a drainage plan for the park, and most certainly you don't want to just, okay, so let's build it now to clean up these areas. Well, you need to future plan. You know, you need the master plan first. You need to know the elements you want, the areas you want to put them in. I think we need to update the master plan so we have an idea of what we want to put in. Because, you know, okay, let's regrade and let's get the fields done. Now we just, you know, we did that, but we prevented ourselves from working in another whole area because of what we undertook. There isn't, to my feeling, there isn't a current master plan for us to be able to then say, okay, the next thing we're doing at the park is this. We can do it.
I don't know that they're that the drainage issue is mutually exclusive, because I don't know that there's much room left on essentially the west side of the road. Most of that stuff is developed. The fields are where they are. And the goal, at least in the short term, would be to get the water off the fields and then to get some accessible paths connecting the fields. The splash pad, I think, would end up being on the opposite side. So you could really kind of tackle the drainage project. I think before we start talking splash pads or community center, stuff like that, we need a comprehensive plan for the rest of it too.
Well, I mean, I've heard anything, Tom, from, reallocating, this field is no longer going to be this, it's going to be something else. We're turning it, we're making a youth one that's shorter, whatever, there's been buzzwords and topics, if we need to crown fields to get them dry, we crown fields to get them dry. Most of those, when I look at them, are pretty darn flat and not meeting typical sports fields, for the purpose of keeping them dry. So that's a lower lift, is the crown fields.
Well, the crown field, I mean, it is right. It's twofold. Theoretically, we could crown fields anytime we wanted to get the water off the field and soak the spectators. But ultimately, you'd have some drainage in there too. I haven't, at least in my time, heard anything about significant modifications to the footprints. Little League did work with the Parks Department last summer and at the beginning of this year to get Field 2 changed just a little bit, but the footprint of the field itself remains, but they just increased the size of the infield and the cutouts to accommodate really kind of an interim size field between those in Diamond 1 and the bigger, pro size fields. But
Just to expand upon that, over time, we've looked into putting a larger pavilion over on the west side there behind the Little League snack stand. And we've always been basically stopped in our tracks with the drainage and the site work. It doesn't work right. It's never going to work right. And we can never build a pavilion there until we get the drainage straightened out. And if we did somehow build a pavilion there, it would flood the fields. We would hurt ourselves. So drainage is probably going to be the biggest thing. Tom, I think there is a couple things on the west, but not, to your point, it's pretty much built out. But a master plan of what we want, where we want it, would really add up before we started draining.
Well, and I will
agree.
say, it's unfortunate that New York State Parks won't pay for the plan, the master plan itself, or the update. And it's definitely to your benefit in terms of being competitive. They do ask you now, in addition to just providing your standard authorizing resolution for the application, they ask the town board or the planning board to pass a resolution that reaffirms your master plan is essentially still up to date, or within the last 5 years is up to date. So if that's not the case, I know this isn't a huge park, it's not 50 acres, but if you see the potential for additional future development and
Pete, do you know when that was last updated?
For my time,
It's probably close, it's over probably 10 years. I think Tony Kotz was the last.
So the committee still exists, they just haven't really. So we got to get on that then.
Nathan, for the record, it's 140 acres.
140 acres.
Yeah, Vets Park is.
I think for the purpose of this discussion, I'm just going
Holy mackerel.
I don't think we can dig deep into each one of the possibilities. I think we need to say, okay, which ones do we want to try and scope it out outside of this discussion, but let's get that list together, because this may take all day if we don't start to.
These are the go, no goes. Is this a project? Is this not? I mean, that's the tough part. You kind of got to peel back a couple layers on these to go, can we do something? What's the play?
I would hope that possibly our master plan would give some favor in terms that the plan's pretty comprehensive, and the appendices have a lot of information Nathan and I talked about community wants and desires. I know we might not get maximum points, and we wouldn't necessarily be following every channel that we'd like to, but with this abbreviated time, there may not be future opportunities to address the drainage, the ADA compliant trail, and there's definitely not going to be another CARES Act round where you would be able to have nearly completely funded a splash pad. So the ideal plan would be to convene, have the master plan made, everything like that. And by the time we do that, none of these things may be a reality because none of the funding would be there. I guess that's where we work with you guys to say, kind of like we did last year, let's go for this and make it happen. It didn't work because of the tower, but with a heavy emphasis on recreation in this year's funding source, that might not happen every year. So this is the time we try for it and we gather as much as we can. to help.
Agree on that.
Well, I've already put in a request to Paul D'Orlando, Erie County. I want to have one discussion with him on really the town of Grand Island's eligibility. If there are specific areas we either can or cannot do projects, we obviously, that's essential to the planning of these projects. So I'm hoping by week's end, I'll have that answer for you, provide some clarity. I don't know if you want to switch. Sorry, Peter.
A question regarding, ADA compliant paths and connections and all that stuff. We've recently, over the past couple of years, erected a couple park shelters, and they do not have a concrete floor. They have a safety surface. That's something that would make a lot of sense, would be to put concrete in them. Would you consider that part of an element we can roll into perhaps ADA compliance there with paths and that?
I think absolutely, as part of a larger overall project, yes.
Okay.
I mean, we've got a number of one-ups, Pete just talked about that one. The town board Monday night is going to entertain looking at a project where we're putting a bridge, we're hopefully they're going to authorize, we're putting a bridge in. We're obtaining a pedestrian bridge and foundations in a trail area back in one of our more rural setting parks, passive use trail. Do we start, and I guess in terms of the process and the application and, when is it, as we said, the force main we finished, boom, it's out, it's no longer valid. If we put together, concrete patios at the pavilions because it's a handicap access, we put in this bridge, we lump all of the, or do we do a bunch of little ones? Do we do one big one that's a whole bunch of little ones?
Yeah.
But, when do they have to be ready? When do they, we're talking about authorizing to buy this thing. We got a quote on a price and a 30-day delivery, guarantee for cost, where we could pull the trigger and order this thing, but then do we shut ourselves out of eligibility?
How much money?
We're
$9,000.
the bridge is $9,000, but we're talking like a $20,000 budget, foundations, extra work we've got to do in order to put this thing up. That's kind of, you guys are going to see that one, you're going to see that Monday night is that's come right now. It's set up to come out of funds out of recreation, but okay, 50% of it could be paid for if we bundle a bunch of these things, and could they be put together and turned in? Is this the kind of thing that could qualify? But what's the time frame?
Well, it is tough to bundle, I guess, small components or small individual projects in multiple locations. To be honest with you, that would probably be your worst nightmare administrating that grant if we were fortunate enough to get it. It's already one of the more New York State Parks puts you through the ringer, and it's mostly the procurement and the bidding processes. But timeline-wise, traditionally, as always with the CFA, anything that we put in for, the award announcements are going to be December. So realistically, we're looking at projects that you just be getting started. Would be lucky to have any contracts with the state, about a year or so from now.
So it sounds like we need to identify fairly major projects.
We're looking really 2022 to 2023 to really start anything major.
Okay.
In terms of capital projects. Yeah. There was a potential project brought up. I'm not sure on the name. I'm going to guess this was phase 2 of Scenic Woods, if we're at that point. We had a Nolan.
You can drop that one. Next one.
Next, okay.
Out of nodding head saying
We
no, right?
need to see how that works out maintenance wise and how much it takes the town to maintain phase 1.
Okay, understandable.
Miles of trails.
Okay, I'm actually going to turn it over to Bernie now. He's got a couple notes on some potential, I think some planning projects possibly.
Correct. I got a call from Jim Sharp, and he wanted to put in a grant for a planning grant. I had requested a scope of work and a budget on what they really wanted to do, and I'm not really sure if it was a comprehensive master plan update or something else. So I'm still looking for a little bit of direction on what you wanted to do with that. Nate, I believe that's $100,000 max on that for the planning grant. So again, it's back in your court to tell me, what you want to do, because that would be a very eligible, fundable project.
What if we don't know about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's deal with the things we know about. I mean,
Okay.
things shouldn't be coming in the back door. It should be going in the front door through the town board. And no offense, updating comprehensive plan, which we just did. We just finished it. So $100,000, I can't really justify
Wasn't
that.
all the work fee, was it?
They're working on that now.
Okay.
It's already funded.
So one thing I know from the long range planning committee is they're working pretty hard for the hamlet down in Ferry Village, the historic Ferry Village thing. And
Yep, that was it.
Jim Crawford's been working on that through the Historic Society. Mike, I think you might know a little bit more about it than me, but I think that was something they were working on towards putting grants money for that. Do you know anything about it or not really? June?
Not about
She's been talking about it
no.
at the LWRP, so, but just, I'm putting it out there because I know it's been discussed. Okay.
So there was a Ferry Village. What was the stuff we pulled that one day, Patty?
Very
Part
good
of
master
it.
plan.
Where's the master plan?
Yeah.
Village, yeah.
Old.
Yeah, so they had me pull that out at one
Well, the
meeting.
time as it is down there.
Yeah.
It's way down
Was not well received at all.
Well, that was,
Exactly.
We're approaching it a different way now, I guess. I don't know.
That most of
Is
the
that
people that opposed it either died or are in nursing homes.
You said that, not me.
Is this what the Jim's talking about though? Is it the Ferry Village master plan?
That's maybe what I'm talking. maybe.
Well, like Mike said, Jim should be bringing this to the board first. Right.
Okay. At this point here, that's all that has been approached to me. So again, I'll take direction whichever way you'd like us to go on that.
Just feedback wise, he should be going through us to the grant writers as well. I mean, we need to be informed on what's going on. And you're really working for the town board, not for Jim Sharp or some other entity. So when they approach you, you should say, is the town board aware that you're approaching me on this? And if the answer is no, then you should say, please go through the town board. Once they refer you to me, then I can talk to you.
Okay, sounds good.
We're not trying to put walls up. We're just trying to get a process that controls how your time is being used on behalf of the town.
Sounds good to me.
So Bernie, one thing I would bring up to you while we're talking about all this stuff.
Yes.
Came out of a meeting with Greg Stevens and Michelle Lockett last week. We were down looking at our linear path on Bedell, which the town owns and maintains, that runs down the utility corridor and then turns down the sewer line. And we talked about potentially extending it and following the utility corridor farther. The first section would be between Bedell. I don't know if you're familiar with our geography, but it would be between Bedell and Baseline. A small section, maybe 500 feet, something like that.
Yeah.
750, which would extend our linear bike path away from a dangerous intersection for people going to it.
It crosses at point
It
two.
kind of crosses in a weird spot, but the discussion was there, how far can we go with this? And their comments were that National Grid has, I'll say, a pot of money that they apply towards projects like this, that apply towards communities, on their right of ways and stuff like that. Does this make any sense to Chase or no?
Yeah, I think it would be, because now you said several things that are all buzzwords today, pedestrian safety, bike safety, and and keeping bikes out of a certain intersection, absolutely. But that would also, if I'm not mistaken, I think that would also go under New York State Trails grant as well. So there's a couple opportunities there. So if you have a pretty well-defined scope of work, what's going to cost, let me take a look at it. I get a hold of National Grid, see which way would be easier, either going through them or going through the recreational trails grant.
From what I understand, Greg Stevens actually reached out to Grid and they told him there's opportunities there for us. So I was shocked there was, but he said there was. So knowing this meeting was coming forth, I said, okay, I'll at least bring it forward and let you investigate it a little bit. We don't have a scope of work laid out. It's more of just, boy, we'd like for the trail to end over there instead of here. But it's not like we're going 5 miles either, you know?
Okay. I actually work pretty close with Greg Stevens, so I can give him a call and just to see what his thoughts was on that, just to be double sure.
To me, it would be us putting our toe in the water to see how receptive they are to extending this. And if it went well, then maybe we bite off a little bigger chunk for the next round.
Okay, that sounds good. Let me find out and I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
So
Would the continuation be a paved non-motorized trail?
That would be the plan. It's currently a small bike path paved.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to just continue it. We'd like to build upon it piece by piece.
It's
Okay.
part of the shoreline trail. So it's part of a new link that's being looked at.
Okay.
There's some more buzzwords.
I think Mike's been trying to ask something for a
So,
while.
so a couple items. One is, we're doing the LED light conversion, and Lynn, I don't know where that's at, but is there any way that would qualify for anything, since it is an energy savings and what have you?
I think it already has some.
$25,000, that's nothing.
Oh,
And that's a nice sort of grant. But is there any CDB opportunities or anything of that nature for LED light conversion, energy savings, green energy?
Mike, let me back you up. Which kind of LED is street lights?
Street lights.
Okay, and who owns the street lights?
Well, that's what we're in the National Grid owns the street lights. We're in the process of taking them over.
Okay, so they will become town property?
Correct.
They will be.
Yep.
So it's neighborhood street lighting. It's not traffic lights. It's,
Street lights,
yeah.
street lighting. Okay. I believe NYSERDA does still have that opportunity for that conversion. When do you think you'll have the ownership or site control?
Hopefully no later than August.
Okay.
Will that be too late?
Probably, because the application would go in and we would have to make sure that we had site control, in other words, ownership documentation. But if we're just months away, I'll double check. And Mike, you said there was about a $25,000.
Well, there was a NYSERDA grant, which is $25,000, I believe.
Okay.
Out of about, what is it, $500,000 or $600,000 of expense.
It's 1.2 million to purchase the lights.
We probably can't do the purchasing of the lights, but it's more the conversion of, it's not purchasing the hardware.
Right.
I bet that probably won't be grantable, but maybe the LED light conversion part would be where we could
And I
do
don't know
something.
the actual breakdown of the numbers for that stuff. I don't know
All right,
materials.
so let me just repeat this, make sure I understand. So we're in the process of purchasing X amount of light poles, and you're going to convert them into LED lights down the road.
Right.
So right now you're in negotiation for that conversion to purchase those light poles, and or to buy the light poles, and your desire is then to convert them over into LED lights.
We already have the design and
Okay.
under a performance contract that the conversion was happening. That's how that was approached.
So we already have design, we already have an agreement to purchase the equipment from NIPA.
Okay. All right. Do you have a price tag on the conversion and the lights?
I'd have to pull it out.
We do have an itemized list, we just don't have it in front of us. But yeah, we do
All right.
want the itemization on that.
Okay, get that over to me whenever you can. I'll see where that could fall. This might be a multiple application to figure out who to turn to, because if you're talking, over $100,000, then obviously if there's got to be some sort of grant monies to help with that conversion, that cost, I would assume.
My other question is that going to hold up our project? Because if we do the purchase in July or August, we put a letter of credit on there that we pay for a year that needs to be in place until the conversion is done.
When do you think the conversion actually is gonna happen for the lights?
I'm hoping it's gonna follow right after the sale. Like as soon as we buy them, they can get working on the conversion.
Okay.
But if we have to wait for a grant contract, that's gonna screw that up till it could be next year before we can start the conversion.
Here's all I would like us to look at and understand what the timing is. Just for the purchase of the lights, how much do the lights itself cost and any other hardware that goes with it? As opposed to, we're gonna buy out all the existing poles and other things.
Right.
I think that probably is gonna be too far along, and that's gonna be done by August, it sounds like.
The cost.
So let's keep that
the
separate.
purchase, all that stuff is going through NIPA with
Yeah.
their deal they get.
Do you think you can separate the two, the actual purchase of the LED lights?
That's just NIPA stuff. The other one is gonna go through the energy performance contract, all the work itself. But
So-
again, if we're purchasing it and we own it and we own the lights, we have to maintain those lights between now and the time we change those bulbs. So we're gonna have to come up with a maintenance contract of some sort with somebody for the next year until we get a contract.
And Tonawanda said they would consider sharing, so that's something to discuss.
I mean, we're not at a point to change direction and come up with a maintenance contract. I don't know
So we think we should leave this off the list? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
unless there's an opportunity for a couple $100,000. I mean, I don't think there's anything out there.
Why don't we give that
We
to
might
Bernie?
not realize the savings by
Yeah.
delaying it for a year, the
Let's
25,000 or
let's
whatever.
look at
Right.
it.
I mean, let's send it to Bernie, maybe he can just find a one-off grant
Breakdown.
unrelated to this, but it doesn't hurt for him to look at it, but let's not consider that a priority at this time. Next one that I wanted to ask about is, so WQIP, starting with water, is there any water projects that could qualify that we'd want to put through this process?
So the water project that's eminent and forthcoming is we're extending the transmission main up Baseline Road. However, that one's been bonded, funded, set up, the whole plan's in place. At the same time, the county just came to us and said they're getting ready to do Baseline Road. So the last thing that anybody wants to do is have them refurbish Baseline Road and then us tear it up and put a water line in. So we're in a dance step right now, coordinating with them. Our intent is basically a winter build. We've talked about, late fall, winter build, because water line can be put in then. But we can't keep, if the county's planning to do stuff, if all of a sudden we're gonna put off a calendar year in order, it's really kicking a lot of entities down the road of okay, now what are they gonna do? They were focused on their capital plan was being set up. All of a sudden we throw a shockwave in their plan. So I don't know on the water side.
The county's gonna do Baseline
No.
and East River?
No,
They're doing that stretch of basin.
no,
No.
They changed
they're
now?
not doing it because you're doing your water line.
So that.
Well, but if we push it on, are they then following up okay, now we're gonna push out on a grant.
Oh, 2023 even better. So
Okay.
here's
Okay,
the
that's,
conversation we had with Wendell
That's-
regarding the Baseline Road water line. They suggested applying for a WIA grant and holding off on the construction and bidding the project until February. Only because the big thing being pipe prices right now.
Oh, yeah.
They're
volatile.
We have over 8,000 feet of pipe we're putting in the ground of 12 inch, 16 inch. So the cost and the availability were big light bulbs that went off.
And what's the match on that?
I don't know for sure what that is. I don't know if you guys can tell us that, the WIA grant.
Oh, man, it was, what was it, 60%? It was different depending on.
Is it a
on
water?
Drinking water.
It's drinking water, right?
Yes.
Yeah, drinking water, 60% grant funded.
I think it is, so we get enough for 40%.
So, and Bernie and Nathan, I mean, is that the best approach, going that type of a grant, or the WQIP, which could qualify for this as well?
The drinking water won't qualify for WQIP because you have to have a water quality improvement component to that. Like with a sewer project, you know, you're preventing I&I issues, you got some sort of measurables, but for drinking water, it's going to be a WIA grant, and that is not open. I spoke with Dwight Brown yesterday, and they are anticipating more money coming down the pike, but you know, we're still talking, you know, 9 months, 12 months down the road before you get a contract. So if the county's coming in to tear up the road,
They're coming in
2023.
2023.
I'm sorry.
2 years out,
Oh.
Never mind my statement, I was wrong. Things have changed since our last discussion.
2023,
Okay.
so we're okay in that regards.
Absolutely. Then we need to put that one in for sure.
Okay, so let's put that on the list.
Okay. And that's going to be an EFC WIA grant, okay? Because that'll go through that.
And then we have, it's already listed on the IUP.
It is listed.
Yep, and we already
Okay.
have the engineer's report for it.
Okay, great. How much is the project again,
I don't know what the
approximately?
price tag now,
Big though.
yeah.
It's a moving target with COVID.
It's over $1 million probably, right?
We borrowed 1.5 for it, but I think it's gonna be more than that now.
Okay. Well, I think we will pay up to 5 million, so we're in good shape as far as dollar amount. So the only thing is, it's just your timing. So if this is scheduled for 22, 23, and we get this thing and get it approved, once it's approved,
They seem to think that you can get it, you can start your project or go out for bid once you have the award. You don't necessarily have to have a contract for the WIA grant in your hand before you can bid it, so.
I agree with that. I want to, as we get to the, you know, once we get to that point, if we're fortunate enough to get it awarded, we just got to proceed with caution because there's certain procurements that we have to follow, certain things that you got to do for MWBE, and all that other stuff. So if we do spend money, we got to make sure that we're going to get it reimbursed at that point. So we'll have to work a little closer to make sure that during that time period, we're following the protocols that EFC will allow us to move forward with it.
Yeah, that was,
So,
we wanted to wait until February to bid, because usually they have the awards announced by then.
yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good.
Is there any other
All right.
projects that
So we're
could,
doing the filters.
is that a big project?
Yeah.
Plant expansion.
That one's what we've listed that a bunch of times on very
We
beginning,
put that, last time we put it, it was a big
twice,
group project, though, it was
Twice.
a $5 million project.
Right. twice.
But now we've broken out the
Mhm.
water line, and, you
Right.
know, maybe the filters would score better on their own.
Yeah, they might.
So let's get the filters on the list.
And what is this again for?
It's filters for the water plant,
Water.
How much are those?
I think it's another 1.5.
Okay, so
So we're currently working
that
on that. Or-
this does sound like a WQIP. Do you have an engineering report, feasibility study and stuff like that?
I know we have something that's been submitted before. I can see what we have for that.
Yeah, we had to have
All right.
some funding, so yeah.
All right, get that to me as soon as you can, because
Drinking water, Bernie.
it's what?
Drinking water.
Oh, it's drinking. The filters are for the drinking water.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So it's a water,
That's
water
what-
not WQIP. No.
No, it's not WQIP.
Is the filters that you're replacing, do they have any sort of like energy efficiency component?
We're expanding, we're making the plant larger. It's not a replacement, it's an expansion.
Okay.
Well, that's a WIA grant as well, then. I mean, that's a big number. That's a big number.
Would we submit two requests? Is that acceptable to do?
Yeah, I would, since you got one on the IUP already. Is this one on the IUP as well?
I don't know if it's on there as a separate project.
Okay,
We submitted a whole package with the filters, the water line,
Tank.
and a tank, a storage tank, as one project before. So I don't know if this one was actually put on there separate or not yet. I know the water line was.
if it was me, I'd put it in, because there's other municipalities that has multiple EFC grants that are open. So I would say if 1.5 million, and then you got your other baseline, your water line going down baseline. I think that's, you know, if you're in those high numbers, I would definitely go for it.
And Lynn, just so that we're not doing double work, would it be Bernie or would it be, what's the contractor that's doing?
Bundles going up water.
So is it Wendell that would do the grant request or would it be Bernie's team?
I can have Wendell put it on the IUP.
Okay,
They got the information, and then we can get you the information you need to do the grant application.
Okay.
sounds good. Sounds good.
We don't have a due date for that one yet, though, right?
No, correct. It hasn't opened yet. And that's as of yesterday. I had talked specifically to EFC because I had several things to check in, and they anticipate a large budget coming down the pike for this. So once this opens, it'll be a pretty large pot of money to go after. So submitting 2 grants will not be a problem.
Are there any programs on the water side that are an emergency basis type funding?
Like a FEMA type of thing,
No, well,
like an emergency?
Drinking water.
drinking water, we have a project at the water plant that basically is a significant one. We had a failure of our water storage tank at the water plant. We are currently just kicking off into scoping and design. We have to build this thing rapidly. It is a crisis component. It is a key piece of our water infrastructure that, you know, our foot's on the gas pedal to get a repair done in the timeliest manner, you know, but like I said, it's probably $1 million+ job again. We're looking at no choice but to undertake immediately. Is there any programs out there? Is there anything that deals with, you know, this type of emergency situation?
Unfortunately, no. Now, you know, when you get to those situations where you need to start rather quickly, I'm going to say no. If we broke it up into a couple phases, like for example, let's say that you got to design this thing first, and that's a couple $100,000. Let's go to a legislator for that and try to put it through either DASNY, through the Department of Health. That could be put through fairly soon, and then put the actual water tower itself under construction under a WIA grant. And you know, that's worked as far as timing wise. At least you're covered during the engineering phase of it, and we hope that we get the funding for the construction. So if we break it up into those 2 segments, and we can request a legislative item and we get it, I think that's going to be the fastest. But honestly, you know how these grants are, it's not going to be in a month. You know, we're talking,
We
you
can't
know,
wait next year.
Well, we can't wait. I mean, every day we get warmer is a problem.
So
Okay. then I would say then don't count on a grant for emergency situation. It just doesn't happen. The New York State doesn't move that fast. They just don't.
So how about water quality, WQIP, sewer, whatever? Any
So
major
we
projects?
can, you know, we have all these plans. Have we ever looked at putting year 9, year 10, year 11?
Yes.
Okay, so, you know,
The
those are
problem is that for WQIP, we never qualify.
Right.
Because our receiving water is of such high
Right.
quality that we were
It's not
really
fair.
close
this last time.
I'm not
Plus we
saying
got,
don't try, but I'm just saying
plus we got
historically.
$700,000 for a sewer project.
Yeah, but they're
That was
discharged to 18 Mile
WIA.
Creek.
Yeah.
You know, 18 Mile Creek is a receiving water that's
And there, the river's not.
a drop in a, you know, in a billion-gallon bucket,
Right.
you know, compared to what the Niagara River is. So,
And Bernie and Nathan, I mean, I thought your feedback was we were really close and there was a way to, maybe we could do a better job submitting the next time around, or what was your feedback from the last time?
From the WQIP for the force main,
Yes.
yes.
they wanted to see a little bit more detail on the budget that was more in line with the WQIP criteria. They were pretty vague on all of those questions when we had addressed it to them, but now WQIP has a budget format that is required. So if we did have a WQIP application, then we'd have to work closely with the engineer to fill out that WQIP budget format the way that they want to see it with all the measurables.
Well, the
And I-
problem with the measurables from the force main project is they literally wanted an analytical solution of exactly how much wastewater we were taking out of the river and the true biological benefit of it. There's absolutely no way to do that. And the other piece is that grant, we failed on points because we've never won that grant before. It was stacked on itself. When the scoring came out, you guys were reading the categories.
Should be helping us because we've never won it before.
Yeah.
That would count, but
The whole
most grants work that way and this one
Yeah.
doesn't.
The odd thing is though, the people that scored it was actually in this room. I know Lynn, you were in that discussion and others. And they literally said, you will qualify if you apply.
Right.
And then we didn't
And
qualify,
then we
but it sounds like if we had a little more detail in certain areas,
Oh, we'll
then maybe
definitely
we
try,
may
you
have.
know?
I mean, when you're talking $1 million+,
I get it.
So I'm gonna back up and say, we are currently in construction of our year 9 stuff. There is nothing on the schedule post year 9. So we don't even have something to put in
so it's not
for
worth talking about.
WQIP.
Got it. Okay.
We
I
gotta
guess the
evaluate the next step.
only other question, and I think I already know the answer, but it's worth asking is, we have all the, what's it called for the house?
Private II.
Yeah, the,
Right. Yeah, what about that?
is there, when I looked at the list of things that qualify, I did see house improvements, home improvements. Is there something home improvement wise, and in particular in the low income area of the island, where the I&I, which is water quality related, that maybe we could get funding to help them convert sub pumps and things like that to prevent the water quality issues that exist over there? I mean, that'd be huge. if we
lateral
could help them.
replacements, downspout
There's
disconnects.
always a program that we.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say yes. I have seen that in the past. But your problem is that then you got to get the buy-in from your people that are going to participate in that, and it's a process on your end to administrate who is going to participate in it and who won't.
Well,
And then there is a cost share to that as well, which someone would have to administrate, whether it was the town picking up their tab or the homeowner picking up the tab, like for that lateral connection.
Bernie, the DEC is mandating it. We have no choice. The homeowners have no choice. They must be converted to prevent the I&I issues that's existing. And we're mandated by the DEC on that. Actually, hopefully we're still working on that too. Or we're gonna be in big, as a town, we're gonna be in big trouble. So it's a requirement. They're gonna have to spend the money. What we're looking for is, can we find a way in which we could, save them, however much money and actually pay for it through a grant.
Okay, let me find out. You said you're under consent?
We're on an order of consent for elimination of SSOs. They have basically in our work plan and in the negotiated settlement included components, one of which is a private side component, which includes inspections of homes, identifications, and mandates that the improvements be made. So unfunded mandate.
And we need to do
Okay.
it with urgency too. They're expecting us to be working on it like immediately. Is that correct, Bob?
They're expecting us to already be doing the point of sales. They understood with COVID and the issues of going into homes on a more scheduled than just point of sale. They have taken a pause to get everybody, they asked us and we point blankly talked with them and said, well, you tell us when it's comfortable to go in people's homes. And that put a pause and an understanding that, we're committed. We're just not doing it now with the public interaction. And they were amicable and understanding. However, how long that
why
lasts
we weren't working on
is a
it.
question.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But we are well beyond their, meeting their expectation of the point of sales.
Okay.
We have missed that and we continue to miss that very far.
We should-
All right, well, I'd like to see a copy of that consent order and what the steps are to correct that. And who's gonna be the lead on that so I can get some information back and forth?
Lynn is writing a big note, but I will coordinate with her that we get those pieces to you. I mean, we've actually, we have our wastewater consultant has worked with us. We have a draft of a program with approximate dollars in order to undertake it because we wanted the inspections done by independent instead of putting our staff and our people, meet up at Tops and get harassed because we're putting that in separate independent hands in order to do the inspection. We've got that whole thing mapped out and done.
All right, can I get a copy of that too? Who did that, by the way?
GHD is working with us on it. They actually did a similar program in South Towns.
Okay,
Just for your planning, John definitely wants to talk about some green infrastructure stuff, and Dick wants to talk about some road stuff on a town road that we need to maybe look at CAP for.
Okay. We're replacing the roof on top of this building, Bernie. And I would like to investigate the possibility of putting solar panels up here.
okay.
So we can use some energy savings. If everybody else is getting paid for it, I think the town of Grand Island should.
We're working on a climate smart community designation, which could possibly enhance our grant scoring or qualification.
Mhm.
Charging stations.
You get those basically
That's all
covered.
paid for.
The EV charging stations, as long as we purchase appropriate level ones, that'll be covered, and 90% of the labor will be covered. John's gonna give me an estimate by the end of the week.
Okay, I didn't hear you. Did you guys put in a charging station?
We are in the process right now of participating in, is it Grids program, where they basically will furnish all of it and pay 90% of install. So we have just started the ball rolling with an electrical designer, contractor in order to budget and be able to go right down that path of putting 2 to 4 of them in here at Town Hall.
I didn't ignore you, Bernie. It was just Grid's taken on someone who manages the program. So I
Okay,
didn't get stuck in any way, so we just did it.
all right, not a problem. That's great. How about a vehicle? Are you gonna buy a vehicle?
Down the road possibilities.
Okay, because that I believe if you buy one and the battery is at a certain level, you get a percentage back on that.
Yeah.
Are you guys working with Jason from University of Buffalo?
Yeah, we work with Jason Kulishevsky and Heike
Okay,
Newer. So yeah, we're really in tune with them on this, and
okay,
we understand the fleet options. We just wanted to get the EV stations installed while the grant money was so plentiful, and we'll pay very little on install, as Bob said, or the equipment itself. But yeah, that's on both John and Dick's radar.
okay. And then the solar panels, you have an idea what you want to do, or has Jason brought up anything on that by any chance?
No, we have a. That one's in its infancy.
Yeah, spitballing right now, yeah.
Like John's
Okay,
project, he just wants to see it come to fruition, so.
Well, now's the
okay.
time. Now the roof is new.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. And then you had something else?
Dick has something he just wants you to know.
Yeah,
Okay.
if there's any money in transportation, whatever, for roads, I've got a road that needs to be widened and drainage and rebuilt. I actually have two, but my priority would be Ransom Road it's about 1.34 miles to be exact.
Historically, there has never been a grant to repave a road or to widen it or anything, unless it had to deal with like a water line or, something like that. But, with this infrastructure money still up in the air, I'll have to check. Do you have a dollar value on that?
1.5 million.
Okay.
So
Just so that,
Right, it's right on a school zone too.
So there's no reconstruction monies in that transportation bill that's coming out?
there's supposed to be, but I haven't gotten any detail on it at all. And I'm, in contact with DOT all the time, and they don't even know themselves how it's going to be put into it, because it's federal money to each state, and then each state's going to determine on how they're going to do it. Whether they just give you more CHIPS money, or they're going to say, well, we're doing asphalt. I don't know yet. And it's unfortunate that they're talking the billions and billions of dollars, but there isn't any definitive what it's going to cover.
What about a salt shed?
Now, the salt shed is fundable under the QIP program, but we have to make sure, are you under consent of contaminating the water table?
No, it could be.
So
The salt shed, it is fundable under QIP, but we have to be, we have to show proof that there's contamination into the water table.
Bernie, it's replacing an existing, so we don't have a outdoor open storage right now. It's just a very dilapidated age structure.
Yeah.
Very well.
Again, that
Dilapidated structure.
something like that, I would definitely prefer, approach a legislator for that. I know that Pendleton just got a salt shed with some appropriation money from legislators, so that's a way to, just to try to get it that way as well. But as far as like under that WQIP for the salt shed, you gotta have proof that it's contaminating something.
Okay. And I also would be interested in solar panels on my new roof.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
I'll check into that.
Welcome together.
And I'll get back to John on that directly, because I believe there's, between NYSERDA and what Jason's talking about, there might be some funding available. But I want to be sure before I can say anything.
Anything else? Good start.
I'd like to recap then what we're going to do then for this one here. It's going to be a CFA for Vets Park. And who's going to be our main contact for that? Is that you, Lynn?
Did we get any firm direction on if that's something we want to pursue?
That's what I thought. Okay.
I think, I know we need a little bit of clarification on this CARES Act CDBG program, whether or not Vets Park would be an eligible location. If it is, I would strongly recommend just applying for that. That's up to $500,000, no match, as far as I'm aware.
I think we should do it.
Absolutely. Yep.
All the splash pad.
That's what you're saying, that's okay, so
Let's
splash
look
pad,
at-
that's part.
So that's kind of a combination though, right? Are we going for different grants? One for
Well,
the
if we're looking at the
drainage?
CFA, that has to do more with like,
trails
the
and drainage.
drainage, but possibly completing the ADA trail and seeing if we can even have somehow access to the pavilion in an ADA compliant way. So I think we should.
Okay. Then I'm going to still say who's the project manager on that, so that we can get some clear-cut direction on what we're doing.
Well, we're definitely gonna have to be working closely with the Parks Department and engineering. I mean, there's materials that we need for the application that,
Lynn's list
someone's
is,
gonna have to take charge of developing some of those things.
Engineering. We'll solve through it.
Lynn's list is super long.
Whatever.
If it's appropriate for a town board member to help, I can help, and I will do anything I can.
I'll send you the list. I'll send you the list of required documentation. So you can kind of see, at a bare minimum, what we've got to come up with here. That schematic overlay and site plan is really pretty crucial, because that site plan has to tie in all of the existing amenities. They have to tie in the pictures of the park that we need to provide. We need to show pictures of some of the issues you're looking to mitigate. So, drainage, for example, what areas of the park are experiencing poor drainage. That all needs to be tied into this site plan, and then all of those items that we're proposing have to correlate to our budget. So
If you send us a list of needs or requirements for this, we can sort through it amongst ourselves and figure out.
Yeah, when you send that, can you send it to the whole board? I mean, I think it's gonna be primarily a lot driven by engineering and parks, but I think we all can pitch in where we can.
And as far as
I'll get that.
the part of that, Nathan, with the splash pad, we've done so much work in that area already. I know some things will be new, but we've, Dick, John, and I have had meetings with vendors. I hope we've done some of that work would not have to be repeated, perhaps.
Well, you're certainly going to want to go back and look at your budget and make sure that we've got some updated costs. I'm looking to pull up that application right now. Again, too, if we want to move the splash pad to Veterans Park, are you going to want to consider expanding the footprint and possibly a larger, facility, if you will? I know that area at Tower Park was somewhat limited, depending on the open space and availability and utility connections at Veterans Park. Do you want to sort of expand the design?
Personally, yes.
Yeah.
But we got a lot of work to do next.
Mhm.
Yes, Simeon and Titus voted yes on that one.
Simeon and Titus did vote yes.
So the CARES Act money, is that the same time with the CFA? That's later in the year, correct?
Yeah,
Month
CFA, we
later.
have, CFA is mid-July. The CARES Act is end of August.
Okay, same time as CDBG? The same way.
I'm sorry, Lynn?
Same time as the CDBG grants were done, same time as last year, like?
Sort of. Those usually, the Erie County, this program specific to Erie County usually open in August and due towards the end of October. The CARES Act for CDBG is open now, and they've got a deadline. I believe it's August 27th.
Okay.
Specifically for the CARES Act, or the CV fund, as they're calling it.
Nathan, for that, when you look over the application, will you let us know what we would have to change?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what else is on the list? What we came up with?
You're recapping, Bernie.
Let's see here. I'm going to earmark a couple of the projects for EFC, which is going to be baseline water line and the filter for the water plants. I'm going to double check on this assistance to the homeowners for that DEC consent order, which I'd like to get as much information on that as I can, and I will report back to you guys. And then I'll double check on that solar panel project, and also get back to you to tell you exactly what we need at that point.
The railroad path.
Yeah. The path stuff, you gotta meet with Greg Stevens there, Ernie?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask, hang on, let me make sure I got that. Yep, I have it right here. I'll double check on that with Greg.
Instead of, I have no problem taking the lead on that one if you need me on any of that stuff. And if you're gonna talk to Grid at all, I'm happy to be involved.
Fantastic. That would be a great help. Absolutely. Let me get some little direction from Greg and then I'll give you a call back and we'll
pretty
reconnect.
Educated on that whole easement, let's say that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And then you want the LED cost breakdown to see if that fits anywhere?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yep, and all the rest of this, we're just, again, kind of hurry up and wait on all the transportation related funding and infrastructure, whether it's through the feds or the DOT. The feds have put out some programs, but they haven't approved any of the spending yet. So still kind of waiting on a lot of answers to come down. Do you have anything else, Bernie?
That's it.
No, not really. I think that's it. I just have a final comment that though I'd like to just to throw out there. We'd like to participate wherever we can on these projects, even as to listen in or to get to know what's going on as far as your capital improvement project list. Some of these grant applications, when they open, they give you like the 6 to 8 week window. And sometimes you're rushed to get what you need. But if we can sort of prepare as far in advance as we can on these things, it really will strengthen the application down the road. Like, I don't want to bring like East River back up again, but it's just like, if that's something that there should be discussion, we'd like to be part of it just so that we have some planning that we can do for either feasibility studies or what have you. On the baseline water line replacement project, working in conjunction with the county or whatever, just so we sort of have a timeline or a time frame to look. Like that water line, yeah, it's definitely a doable thing. And if it's going to be part of another project, we put it on the radar so that we start collecting whatever we're going to need as far as in advance as we possibly can. And we both Nate and I are very interested in being part of that, the planning of these projects. So again, it just gives us better insight on how to help you. So the more information that we can work together on, the more successful we'll all be. So I just want to let you know that we're always looking for that as well. And that's all I got for today. How's that?
Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you, Bernie.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Bernie.
Nathan.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Nate.
I really appreciate it.
Get
Appreciate
better.
the time, everyone.
Feel better, Nathan.
Feel better, Nathan.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
See you, Tom.
Talk soon, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.